All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and start the next session. My name is Krista Hartzuk, and I'm the Small Farms Program Manager at Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I am also the SARE Coordinator for Iowa, and this next session is another one of our SARE Farmer Forums. This one is featuring Ray Cruzy, and Ray and his wife Jen had kind of a varietal trial of different varieties of strawberries that maybe hadn't been tried before in Iowa to test their performance. So Ray and his wife Jen live in Colesburg, Iowa, where they bought a farm in 2019. Both have a passion for growing plants and are currently exploring enterprise opportunities to make their farm a viable business. Ray also works at the Dubuque County Extension Office, helping clients with technical plant information and local foods information. And Jen works for the Delaware County NRCS office, where she designs soil conservation structures for landowners. Please help me welcome Ray Cruzy.
Okay, can you all hear me? Okay, good. Okay, well, this is great. I really want to thank you all and appreciate you for being here at this talk. There's a lot of other really good presentations going on right now. And when I saw the agenda, I was like, I kind of want to go to those too. But anyway, I appreciate that you guys are here to listen about the Cultivar performance trial that my wife and I did at our farm. So just to kind of start off, who here grows strawberries? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. How many folks grow in the matted row system, where we grow the strawberries out in kind of like a thicket on the ground in rows? Nobody? Everybody on plastic? Plastic? Okay. Well, maybe this might not apply as much to you, but maybe you might be able to glean some information about the information about how these cultivars performed in our state in terms of taste and things like that. So again, this is my wife and I. She's not here today because we just had a little baby back in November, and she's at home taking care of the baby. So but we are in this together. We purchased the farm together. She was raised in Tama on a hobby farm. I was raised in Dyersville on a dairy farm. And if you don't know Ajay Nair, I earned my master's degree in horticulture with Ajay. It was a great experience, and there's often days where I wish I could go back because it was a lot of fun. But anyway, we were both interested in growing things, both interested in soils. We're kind of like soil nerds in a way. There's not very many of those out there, but we like soils and discussing them and stuff. And we were married in 2018, and like I said, we had our first baby last November. So the opportunity we had is we bought a farm, which is exciting, right? I mean, a lot of you are farmers out there. You remember your first day buying your farm. I mean, that was a good day for us. So the opportunity that we had, we kind of had the idea of growing strawberries in the back of our minds to start with. So we got ourselves a small parcel, 20 acres, 15 tillable, excellent silt loam, lust-based soils, primarily sea soap. So we got some good drainage out there. We got paved road access. I don't know if you can see here, this road that goes up and down is paved, and we're equidistant from 3 county seats. So we felt like we had a good crowd to draw from for clients. We have, if you can see down here at the bottom, we have this large manure lagoon. There's no manure in it now. It hasn't had manure in it for 20 years, but that's got 450,000 gallons worth of water storage. We're like, score, there's an asset. So anyway, we also had a house and a historic barn that's been on the property since about the 1850s. So we thought that would serve as a great backdrop for us to be able to sell berries out of when we do a U-pick. But the challenge is we're like, okay, we'd like to go plant some berries, right? And there's a lot of new cultivars out there that haven't been tried and that are offered by the strawberry, crown producers out there. So we're like, okay. We looked at the ISU information. Most recent was 2011. There was a couple other cultivar trials, but none of them had studied a lot of the new cultivars out, which we identified as 7. So we wrote a cultivar grant. And we got that grant, and this is kind of a layout of the plot, just to kind of get your bearings. What we did is we had 4 repeats. As you can see, these 4 lines are red. So we had 4 repeats of those cultivars that we tried. And we had 12 plants in each plot. So like Flavorfest had 12 plants here, and then where's Flavorfest is over here. So it was repeated 4 times, and there's 12 plants in each repetition. Our rows were 34 inches apart. And we did that because we have a tractor that accommodates that. So that's kind of how we designed it. We got the grant. We originally wanted to plant our strawberries here in the field where like a commercial grower would plant their strawberries, right? Well, we just bought the farm, and we go back to the land renter that was renting the farm ahead of us, and he's like, oh, we wanted to know what he sprayed there. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't planting our berries into, soil that had some residual herbicide. And he's like, I don't spray anything that's going to carry over. So we said, we need the records. He's like, well, I don't manage those. He's like, that's my spray guy's job. So we go to the spray guy, and we found out that he applied Callisto and atrazine, which when you look at the label does not allow you to plant any other crops on there other than corn and sorghum for at least the Callisto for the next 18 months. So we're like, okay, we have now moved this to the backyard. So it wasn't optimal, but hey, you know what? That's beginning farming, right? So we ended up there. So for site prep, what we did is we cleaned up our plot with 2 applications of glyphosate, targeting perennial plant growth. Like I said, my wife and I are kind of soil nerds, so we're like, we got to test the soil. We're pretty happy. We have phosphorus and potassium here, and they were off the charts. So we're like, great. I guess we don't have a fertility problem. Our organic matter was also, pretty good. We had, was it 3.7, which I feel that's a pretty decent organic matter content, at least for our soils in Northeast Iowa. Our pH was 6.4, so we felt like we were right on target. We're like, great, we're set to grow berries. We did still add a little bit of manure for some supplemental nitrogen. So some folks would be like, well, that supplies phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen. Why would you want to do that when you're already off the charts in phosphorus and potassium? And our reasoning is we have a lot of experience using this material. It's cow gutter manure from my uncle's dairy farm. And it acts as a slow-release nitrogen source. So we did that. Also, manure increases that microbial activity in the soil, and we've seen that time and time again with the benefits of that. So that's why we applied this to the field. We prepped the soil with a tiller. We planted by hand using some strings, and then we irrigated, and we irrigated, and we irrigated, because right after we planted those crowns, we had a lot of excessive heat that caused crown death. So you can see here what our crowns look like as they passed and what the healthy ones look like when we replanted back into that plot. So it was kind of sad. We really tried irrigating and keeping those berry crowns as wet as we could. In fact, we even burnt up the pump house wiring pumping so much water. So being it's a new farm, apparently we haven't run that pump to its full capacity until it met us. And so, yeah, we had to fix the pump and stuff like that. We replanted the crowns on the 17th of June in 2021. And so what we did is we put all of this extra, we put all of this information into a SARE publication. So if you're interested in seeing as I'm talking what I'm referring to, you can scan this QR code up here or type in that shortened link down there. And you can have this publication that we wrote ourselves. So this is available via SARE, and you can access it there. And so I was going to say the replanting numbers that we did of those strawberry crowns are presented right here, and they're also in this publication. The only thing I really wanted to highlight here, all the numbers aren't super important. It's just that I wanted to point out here at the bottom, Mayflower and Yambu, they had some of the highest replant numbers. With Mayflower, something that we noticed throughout the rest of the plot in evaluating these cultivars is that it had a lot of problems with plant vigor. And I think that also played into one of the reasons why it had one of the highest numbers of replant. In addition, Mayflower and Yambu are also from Europe, if I understand. They're bred in Europe. And so I don't know if that has any contribution as to why these two were one of the worst for replants. But anyway, that was something that we observed. We weren't originally thinking about taking data on it, but hey, times change and that's what happens. And then we weeded. And as all strawberry growers know, that's a big component of success. We tried our weeding machine. We had a carousel weeder that we bought. Learned that our soil is a little bit heavy for the weeding machine, so we have to kind of beef that up a little bit, but we abandoned that after mid-July just because we're like, we just got to get to weeding. So we weeded by hand every 2 weeks until about mid-September. and we had a bad case of zombie weeds. So a lot of you probably know what purslane is, and that is just a weed that just comes back from the dead. You chop up in the little pieces, you leave it out there, it still blooms, produces seed, and, thrives as normal. Or if you get a rain, as we were irrigating too, it just resprouts roots. So it was just terrible. Throughout the season, what I ended up doing is I was weeding these with a knife, and so I'd cut them out of the soil and stick them in the bucket and walk them out of the plot so they don't come back. So that's what I did. I was pretty proud. The weeds didn't win. So that's what our plot looked like in mid-September, and I felt like we were going pretty well. We applied mulch to our berries December 4th, 2021. Patrick O'Malley always says to us that once the nights get below 17, that's kind of when you want to put your mulch on. And so that year, that's when we were observing, we were getting some 17-degree nights, and that's when it went on. I think it's a little later than what some of the other strawberry growers were putting their mulch on, but that's when we put ours on. We used first crop alfalfa hay as our mulch source. So we were looking for the traditional straw, but we couldn't find a good source of straw free of chemicals. We had some beautiful Canadian straw that my dad gets for he has some breeding cows, and we couldn't get straw that was guaranteed free of chemical residues, and we didn't want to apply that to our strawberries. So I had access to some nice first crop hay, which Dad was like, we're spreading that on the ground. But anyway, that's what we used. Turned out great, and we applied it 2 to 4 inches thick and also put around a small rabbit fence around the plot. The following spring, we uncovered the berries about April 4th, this is what they look like. I don't know for those growing berries out there if the black material that you can see here, it's like gummy stuff, is normal. When I grow berries before, I wouldn't say that that's normal. I mean, there's black material on the leaves, but it doesn't quite look as gummy as this was. And I don't know if that's because of the hay or whatever, but it didn't end up phasing the berries at all. We did not see any crown death. One of the things that we wanted to measure with this cultivar trial is any winter injury, and we didn't see any winter injury in any of the cultivars. So that was a good sign, but I don't know, maybe I put the mulch on too thick, compared to what is normal. So we used that hay mulch. This is what it looked like. I think it turned out wonderful. We watched for spring blossoms to come on. We classified the plot as in bloom when 50% of the king blossoms in the plot were blooming. So this would be about it. So we were looking at these plants here, and you look down the row, and when you see about half of those plants with their king blossoms open, that's when we're like, okay, it's in bloom. And that's when we would find it to be, at least for us as what we were planning on going forward, acceptable for taking frost protection measures. So that's when, in the publication that we made and stuff like that, when you see the flower dates on there, that's what was considered as flowering. So and I also wanted to note too, we had a prime spring in our area last year in 2022 when this data was taken. We had a late spring, which pushed our picking later than normal, but we didn't have any frost, and we also didn't have any rain. So I controlled the moisture, didn't have any frost, didn't really have any disease pressure. I mean, so the data that we were able to collect really was for a prime year. So outside of the establishment year, which was a challenge. But anyway, again, these are the bloom dates, harvest dates. The important thing here, you don't have to take all the take in all the individual dates, but AC Wendy, which is a cultivar here, and Yambu, those were our 2 earlier blooming dates, and those are the ones that produce earlier in the plot. The rest of them all kind of lined up together. The harvest process, not anything unusual. We harvested into boxes for each individual plot, took them into the house, weighed them, graded them, and recorded the number of berries and things like that we had from each individual plot. One of the unique things about this cultivar trial that we thought was really cool is that we had a field day for folks to be able to come and actually taste the berries, and we could include that data as part of the cultivar trial. So this is, pictures from that day. We had 43 folks in attendance, and with any, event, I work in extension too, so with any event, we like to have something that is the attractant or the bait to come to the event. And the bait, if you want to say, to come to the event was free strawberries and ice cream. So if you came, you got a free bowl of strawberries and ice cream. So who wouldn't want to come, right? So in addition to that, though, we asked them for a favor, which was really, really hard. We asked those folks to go around. We picked 100 berries from each of the individual cultivars, put them in a plate here, which you can see this man taking a berry. So we had 100 berries from each cultivar put on plates. And those 43 people could go all the way around the plot and try all 9 different kinds of berries, okay? And we gave them voting slips, and we said, vote for your favorite tasting berry. And then vote for your second favorite tasting berry. And then the one that you're like, don't ever plant that again. So what we got for results was we had a tie for 3. So AC Wendy, Archer, and Flavorfest were our top producing cultivars for favorite tasting berries, which, to be honest with you, I was hoping for a little different result, not for a specific cultivar, but for there to be more of a clear winner, which there wasn't. We did this activity with another cultivar trial of tomatoes with the Master Gardeners, so it was another project, but we had a clear winner for what everyone's favorite tasting tomato was. So we were thinking that this would be a great activity to do here to maybe identify that, and I didn't quite get that, but it kind of lent to us what maybe folks are thinking is a good flavored berry. Second favorite votes didn't really reveal anything too groundbreaking. Yambu got 9, which was higher than all the others. So, and then the number of votes for do not plant, and this is where things get really interesting, especially with one cultivar. AC Wendy here and Archer received both, they tied for first, along with another cultivar, Flavorfest, for favorite berry. They were also the top 2 with the most votes for don't plant this again. So I don't know. We didn't really get a lot of, context out of this, but hey, you know what? That's what an experiment is. And maybe this would work with another group of folks or something like that. But this is something that we thought would be, you know what? Let's ask a crowd and see what they think. So, so this is what our strawberry yield is from all harvest across each cultivar. So, here you can see the pounds of strawberries per 100 feet of row and the cultivar of strawberry. I did that yield analysis because everyone in here is probably on different row measurements. These were on 34-inch centers. Some folks are on 42s. Some are on 48s. So I felt it was better for folks to be able to use this publication if they could just figure out how many row feet they have per acre and then prorate that out. And when we look at the cultivar or the yield data, our check cultivar, which I guess I didn't mention this, when we set this data or this trial up, Jewel and Clancy were our check cultivars. So a lot of folks plant Jewel as an industry standard, performs well, and it does well on most folks' farms. But anyway, I was going to say here, Clancy is another cultivar that we have a lot of great success with in folks' gardens in our county or in our area. So we felt like this was something where we're like, we know that Clancy produces well locally. We had other strawberry farmers that are like, yeah, Jewel is our mainstay. So we felt like these were both worthy of classifying as checks because we know that they produce well. And when we look at the yield data at the end, they actually were our winners for top yield. So I guess that's a lesson learned there. One other thing I wanted to say too that I wanted to point out here is the cultivar Archer. That one is one that just didn't yield very well, and there's some other issues that I'm going to outline here in a second, but I just wanted to highlight that there too. That one didn't do very well, and then Flavorfest is our next one down from that didn't yield very well either, but it maybe has other attributes. We'll talk about that here in a second that maybe make it worth planting. We did the statistics on this cultivar trial. Suzanne Slack, who you all probably know at the university, helped us with the statistics. I'm not going to go through the details of this, but what I will tell you, when you read the data in this publication here, and when you want to see if the yield data, which is back here, is significant from each other, whether this production here by Jewel is different or the same as Clancy, you can look over here, and if they share the same letter, which they both share an A, that means that they technically don't have different yields. But when we look over at Archer, it has a C and does not have an A. That means that those yields are statistically different. So I'm not going to go through the details of that. You can look at that and digest that on your own. But I just wanted to let you know that's how it's being interpreted. We provided these statistics here for that purpose. We provided and when talking with Suzanne, she thought it would be helpful to know the number of strawberries per 100 feet of row. So this is that data basically mirrors the yield data that I just showed. So nothing really groundbreaking there. Again, the statistics are there for you to interpret. This is where, when we do cultivar trials, that I think the real art of the the trial manager, which was my wife and I, this is where I think the art of trialing comes out, is when you can identify other attributes that are special or unique to those cultivars that you wouldn't normally be able to capture in scientific data. So we all know what yield data was. That was pounds per 100 linear feet of row. We also had, flowering date and those types of things. This is stuff that I identified that I was like, this is unique. And so we're going to go through each one of these cultivars here in a second. I see some folks snapping with their phones. So, I'll let you, if anyone else has a photo to take. So I'm going to go through each one of these here. So AC Wendy, something that I observed that was unique with this, early in the season, we had some beautiful berries. It was our start of the season, first off for producing berries. I don't know if these pictures are able to do this justice, but towards the end of the season, so this is 6/21, this is 6/12, 6/21, that's 9 days later, there's a lot of cat facing on each one of these berries. And so occasionally, like this one here isn't cat faced, but almost every one of those berries is cat faced. And I know it's hard for you all to gauge scale there, but these berries are a lot smaller too. So, but that was something that I identified with this cultivar. It gets great upfront yields, but I just noticed that there's a lot of cat facing later in the season. Archer, overall, I don't have a lot of good things to say. Nothing against Archer, but it just wasn't great. So the poor berry quality, this is a prime example of what we were seeing with just the berries just look terrible. Uneven ripening. And then as they ripened, the calyxes on them would dry up and die. So they just look crappy. Like if you imagine putting that into a berry box, like it just looks like, they were sat in the refrigerator for the last week. And those are just freshly picked by a couple hours. So this is another representation of maybe a better box of Archer berries, but that kind of gives you a sense of what they look like. Even for our cultivar trial day, when we had folks out tasting the strawberries, we had a hard time getting 100 strawberries out of the, 4 different repetitions of this. So we had to split some of them just so that we had 100 pieces for folks to try, because we just had a hard time getting berries that actually looked good to eat. Clancy, again, this was our second top performer of yield. At the same time, even though I've grown a lot of this, and we have other gardeners in the Dubuque region that grow this cultivar with a lot of success, if you put these berries in a bowl with other strawberries, you can almost pick them out without even knowing, which box they came from, because the taste is lacking. I wouldn't say it's bad. There's just nothing there. So they look beautiful. The plants were great. There was a lot of other things that were wonderful about it. It's just that if you're looking for something that's going to just really pop for flavor, it's the only thing they just lack in that. So I don't think that it overtakes the consideration that they shouldn't be planted, because it was the second highest producing cultivar. And you can see these are beautiful berries. But it just, what do you want to say? The flavor just isn't quite there. And I was a little disappointed. Dickens, nothing really unique or special that I identified about the berries, but something I did think that was interesting is I saw some leaf netting here later in the season. I couldn't identify when I looked at my books for insect damage and diseases and things like that, whether this is something that actually was a problem or not. I couldn't identify whether it was a virus causing this leaf netting or whether it was actually an insect. I can't remember. I think it's leaf hoppers or something like that sucks the juices from the leaves and causes the leaves to net. I can't remember which one it is, but I don't know, whether it was a virus or an insect causing this. But this cultivar was especially susceptible, and you would see that throughout the plot. And you could pick that out even without the plot markers there. You could be like, yep, this is a Dickens because of the leaf netting. So Flavorfest, again, nothing really out of the ordinary for the berries. Great berries. You can look at the, I'll talk about that here in a second, some of the other attributes, but They tasted great. They just had some season-end chlorosis. So after we got done picking, I went out and evaluated the plots for leaf health and insect pressure and things like that. I didn't notice really anything that was worth generating a scale or a rating for. So that's why I identified this. I'm like, to develop a rating for the other 7 cultivars to gauge that against is just too hard. I'm just going to isolate this as just a random thing that just is happening. I don't think that it contributed to decreased yield, but there was a lot of this season-end leaf chlorosis that occurred after the berries were done being picked. Jewel, I couldn't say enough good things about it. You can see right there that was an average picking, and every berry looked great. There was no cat facing, no disease, huge yield. All of them were red. It just was a wonderfully producing cultivar. So and that was our check. Or our control cultivar. And so I guess I don't really have, any better berry in the plot that was producing better than this, and maybe an argument to keep planting it because it did just turn out beautiful. Keepsake, this is something that is a newer cultivar. I think it's the newest cultivar out of the Cornell strawberry breeding program. And it's supposed to have an extended shelf life in the refrigerator. It might have a better cultivar or a better storage life. I wouldn't say that it's an excessive amount of time, but maybe it's better. One of the things that was unique is it had these giant calyxes on them. So I don't know, it's just like a flag leaf on a sweet corn ear. Some folks are looking for flag leaves on sweet corn ears because apparently it makes it more attractive to the client, and maybe other regions of the U.S., and maybe it's a detractant. I don't know if having a large, showy calyx on them makes them more attractive. Who here would think that looks better? I don't know what to interpret that as. No one? Do folks think that? Raise your hand if you think it would detract from the berries. Detract? Yeah? Okay, because I really don't know. I just thought it was unique. I was like, you could pick those out of a box. If you mixed all the berries together, you could be like, yep, that's a keepsake without even a tag on it because the leaves were so big. But anyway, it also exhibited some of the season-end chlorosis here that I was seeing in some of the other cultivars. The 1-2 Flavor Fest had that as well. So that was just something that was unique, that was real pronounced. But here you can see just another box of what the berries look like. Decent berry quality, say average. Mayflower, that was one, like I said earlier in the presentation, that had some establishment issues. And so here you can see we planted those crowns. All of them have the same number of crowns per repetition. And you can see here that sometimes they just didn't fill in very well. This one here is maybe a little bit more, average between the other 3 because we had 4 reps. So this is the worst rep here. And this is a little bit more average. And it's hard to compare it to the rows next to it without getting a whole ton of pictures up there and still having the picture quality to illustrate. But I will say that we just didn't have the crown number that I was hoping that the other cultivars, they did come through with. But, we had good berry quality. Can't complain. One thing that I will note, too, that is not in the publication, these berries here, whether it's a benefit or not, they had an elongated cone shape to them. I don't know whether that is a benefit or not, but that's just an observation. The berries were really cone-shaped. Yambu, again, it was average berry production, but something that was really interesting is we had these odd anomalies where we just had these giant kingberries, like I have them circled here. You can pick them out of the box and in the picture. They're just randomly large berries. But then after that first kingberry came off, all the rest of the berries were a lot smaller. So I took a couple flats of strawberries to my grandpa because him and my uncle are the ones that gave me the manure for the berry patch. So, I'm trying to keep up impressions, So my grandpa, he gets the flat of berries and he picks out these big ones. He's like, I hope you're growing more of those. I said, well, Grandpa, I said, with each one of those comes 5 little berries off the same plant. I'm like, this is cultivar dependent. I said, I grow you all the big ones you want, but I said, you're going to get a lot of tiny ones too. He's like, oh, okay. So anyway, so that's why we're doing this, is to understand, how do they perform? And that was just an interesting observation, if you have folks coming out to your patch, and I'm sure you do have some clients that come out that are just only out there picking the big berries. Yeah, they're going to pick a couple big ones, and if they're more inclined to leave behind the small ones, that might be 2/3 to maybe 3/4 the rest of your crop because the berries look tiny. So I don't know, that was just something that I noted that was unique to Yambu. So here's just some concluding opinions, because again, this is how my wife and I are going to go forward with our cultivar trial. Every strawberry grower is going to make different decisions based on what's right for their operation. But for us, Jewel offers the greatest combination of yield, flavor, berry quality, and plant vigor. I mean, it is the industry standard, and I think it's that for a reason. And we saw that come through in this plot. Clancy is the same as the above. It's just that it just lacks the flavor. So, and it is a little later in the season than Jewel. So like maybe a couple days later, it'll start producing. But otherwise, those are kind of some major takeaways that we had if we're to move forward. We did find, and this is something that we would recommend for everybody, ours was just a poor choice. It just had poor yield, poor berry quality, and it overtook any benefit to planting it. So, you know, even if you're looking at it was later in the season. If you look at our publication that we have here, you know, it produces a little later in the season. And even if you're looking for something to fill that late season picking, just the fact that the berry quality is so bad, I don't think anyone's going to want to eat it. The other tested cultivars have certain attributes, you know, making them worth planting maybe, but that's something that you as the grower would have to decide. So again, if you wanted something that was super early, maybe AC Wendy would be a good choice. You know, and so that's just an example. But anyway, that's something that you can look for in the data, and we have all that data represented right here in this publication for you to access. So as always, any project has folks to thanks. So Suzanne Slack, who many of you know as the fruit specialist at the Iowa State campus, she helped us with the statistics for this project. And is also, when you have a SARE Farmer Rancher grant, you have to have a university contact, and she's our university contact. Mike and Mary Knipper, who are family friends, they helped us plant the berries. Gary and Karen, my parents, and Den and Tina, my in-laws, they were super big help for us, and couldn't have done this without them. They were there with, you know, dishing out ice cream, to helping us water when we weren't able to water, and those types of things. And then Marge and Tim Rhines, who is my wife's aunt and uncle, they have a food trailer, and they brought that over to our place to expand our refrigeration when we needed storage for our berries so that we could grade them. And then we have a couple master gardeners, Doug Cheever and Cheryl Sheldon, who took some photos for us. So I want to thank you all for coming and for your time. Like I said, it's really an honor to have you here when there's a lot of other speakers out there that you could have gone to. So again, if you want to access that publication that I've been referring to that has all of our data, go ahead and snap that QR code there, or just type in that shortened link, and then you can see it's a little longer of a publication than what I prefer. It's 8 pages, but it's got all kinds of data. So if you're a grower seriously looking at making a decision, hopefully this helps you out. And so with that, I will take any questions. No questions? Okay. So are you want me to talk about like how like we were able to apply this to? Okay. So I won't lie, trying to get to know the system was a little difficult. But once you understood the system, it was very easy to go forward. It was like there's an annual report, being that this project took obviously 2 years. We established it in 2021 and did the data collection in 2022. So we'd used a full 2 years of the grant cycle to do this. We had to submit a annual report, and the annual report was really simple. So, I mean, Krista was available for questions. I'm trying to remember the person at, was it Lincoln? Joan Benjamin, who is I think the North Central, so she's in charge of the whole region for the administration of the grant. She was very accessible as well. And yeah, so this was a farmer rancher grant, and and correct me if I'm wrong, the farmer rancher grant it's an education, research and education grant that has to benefit an industry. So we had to identify why this wasn't just good for our farm, but we had to, in our our application, identify why this is beneficial for the rest of the state, and that there are other strawberry growers in the state, and it is a specialty crop, so it's not like this is going to apply to the, I don't know how many thousands of corn farmers there are, but there is a specialty crop industry, and this fits that criteria for benefiting that industry. And so that's why we did this cultivar trial, is so that we could understand this and then also help the industry, because those that are growing strawberries in the state are also our peers as well. So yeah. Is there anything else you want me to touch on or expand on? Okay, hopefully this wasn't too short of a presentation, but talking after lunch, I mean, everyone's, yeah, digesting, so. So of the actual everything that was a physical, what do you want to say, expense was covered. So that was an estimate. One of the things, and I don't want to deface the grant at all either, but one of the things that I wish we were able to understand a little better is how to estimate a little better, because like it covered everything that we had planned for up front, but when we got to actually carrying this out, we had a lot more expenses. And so, and especially in the form of time and labor that we had to pay for, that we were like, okay, we thought that this is how much time it would take us to pick those berries based on what our experiences were. Not saying that we're experts, but we had an educated guess. And then we got done picking and we're just like, yeah, we way under budgeted for that. So, but how do we don't want to fudge numbers either, because at the same time, then that's, what do you want to say, fraud? But how do you give yourself a little extra padding so that what's considered padding, what's considered fraud, if you want to say, you want to pad a little bit so that you have a little extra money or wiggle room, so that way you can, you run into those extra expenses, you can kind of shift those around. But at the same time too, making an accurate assessment is hard. So I guess that was maybe something that I, in the future, would like to understand a little bit better on how we could do, because in our grant, like, we had to provide, X dollars, and we provided down to the cent, like the planting tools that we use. We bought 3 strawberry planting tools. They were like $15.43 plus $7.50 shipping. So like, we tried to get all those extra expenses that a person may not think out up front, but then like, we had some frost protection or frost blanket that we bought. And even though we ended up not using it, there was supply chain shortages, so we went and bought that in February rather than waiting till when we actually needed it. But then even then, due to the supply chain shortages, it was an additional like $50-$60 more a roll than what we had initially thought. So like, it's like, okay, but we provided it right down to the cent on the application. So it's just hard to gauge that, because we were buying a year and a half out, or estimating that the costs were going to be that way a year and a half out. So if that answers your question, I mean, it covered everything when we were planning that was a physical thing that we were going to buy. That's a good question. So the SARE grant will not pay for, and maybe this will prove me a liar, because I just said the before. So SARE grant will not pay for perennial plant stock. So that was one thing that we did have to foot the bill on. So I stand corrected with that we did have to pay for that. So when it came to replant, we did have to pay for that. That came out of our pocket. But let's say that this was a cultivar trial on marigolds, which are an annual, it would have paid for that, because it's not a perennial crop. So in terms of that and planning that, I don't know, if you had to buy extra seed because your marigolds died, if this was a different category and it actually qualified to be bought with the SARE grant, I don't know how to budget for that. And that's something I guess maybe would be an improvement on the grant. I mean, I'm not trying to deface the grant. So, because it's been really a good experience. So. Okay, that's good to know. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, it was. I have lots of grant ideas. It's just my time. So that's the other thing I'm challenged with. And our farm that you saw the picture of, I don't know if you saw, there's a lot of buildings that have to be removed, and we're still in the middle of house renovation. So between those things, I mean, you got to have a place to live before you can do other things, and that's what's taking the time. So, but I'm sure you guys all understand. You guys are all farmers and have been there, and you have houses and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, we are going to harvest it again this year. We would like to provide an update to this publication that we have up here. We won't be doing the statistics on it. And the reason why is because it just takes way too long to pick each individual plot and then grade each individual plot and count each individual plot. So, in the coming year, what we're going to do is we're going to take all 4 of those repetitions that we showed, and we're just going to pick them all as one and put them all in the same bucket and count the berries and weigh them, and that's it. And instead of we had 44 boxes. There was a lot of boxes. So, any other questions? No? Well, I appreciate you guys all coming out today and listening. Hopefully it was informational, and yeah.
So as Ray mentioned, this was a SARE Farmer Rancher grant. SARE Farmer Ranchers come out in August.